All right, thanks everybody for coming tonight. We're going to jump right into the program here. Um, and this is mostly going to be about my artwork and my process that I go through to create it. And we're going to cover quite a bit of ground tonight.
Tell us about your pants.
Tell us,
About your pants.
tell us about your pants. I did wear painted pants for the occasion.
Painted pumpkin.
Painted puffin pants. Yep. Custom made for tonight about 30 years ago. I just had a premonition I'd be giving this presentation 30 years ago. So let's jump right into some artwork here. So I think this piece, does anyone recognize this area? Is quite typical of my artwork. Because it's showing different levels of habitat and illustrating something that can't be photographed, that I like to say that my artwork has added value. It is interpretive. It shows you things and is education. Here's another example of that. Oh, what? Straight off of my pants. What do you know? So of course, this is showing inside the puffins burrows in an area that we can't normally see. So that's the painting. And what I'm going to be showing you a lot of tonight are called interpretive panels. That's the lingo for it. And it's the informational signs that you see on public lands most often. So here's that same illustration after it's done and made into a panel. It's got the text on it. You know, it's good to include a little humor. We got the seafood chick menu on the side there. You know, you got to have a few little hooks like that. I also pride myself in being very accurate in my illustrations. I've done some work for field guides. This is from the Handbook of Oregon Birds. And this is a little insight into the process I used for many years. So this is a cover for a Plovers of the World book. Let me tell you about this process. So I draw out the individual plover heads. You can probably see these are all on different scraps of paper. And then I got to get the whole thing perfect by moving these around with little pieces of cellophane tape. And I'm adjusting all of these to be exactly to scale with each other. And I'm going back to the photocopy machine and I'm making it maybe 1-2% larger or smaller. So you get the idea. It's quite a tedious process. Here's the next stage. Here I've traced that photocopied line drawing once I get it all perfect. And there's a pencil drawing. I do it. This is on watercolor paper. And I do some washes on that. You can see the washes on this side. And then on the far side, I'm doing what's called blocking in, just getting the general colors in place. And then here I do the detail. So that's the final piece there.
Oh, what's your favorite color?
My favorite plover? I'm a plover lover. I like the lesser sand plover. It's so much better than the greater sand plover. I mean,
Does he live in India?
yeah, he lives in India. They're placed where they live, but you know, it's kind of general because they have a pretty wide range. I had to pick why are we talking about this plover painting so much? I got 200 slides to get through. Okay. So people must like this. Okay, no. So people ask me like, when did I start doing artwork? Okay, so I'm going to go back to this piece. This is age 12. This is not the type of work I do now. And this appeared in a literary magazine down in California where I was living. And yes, I did win second place. Yeah, thank you. But I don't know. I mean, I hold your applause. Why didn't I win first place? I mean, look at those fangs on that skull. I mean, that's some pretty impressive detail. So anyway, I've been drawing my whole life, but I will point to this, winning this as a watershed moment. See what I did there with the watershed? Okay, here's another example from the early years. And you can see at 14, I could draw it quite realistically at that. And here, 14, this is a self-portrait during my MC Escher phase. All right, so then by the time I was 19, I illustrated this Birds of Oregon book. And you know, there's a lot of artwork in this slideshow that I'm quite proud of. This is not one of those pieces, but this was another big step for me. It was the first book I illustrated, but the puffin is out of proportion. Just compare it to my pants. Okay, I mean, the head is too big, the feet are too big, but anyway. So shortly after doing this, I went off to college, and I went to Cornell University, and on the first day of basic design class, the professor said, "All artwork must be an expression of the human condition." I'm like, that's some BS, man. I want to be a wildlife artist. So I would say characterize my artwork as being an attempt to connect people to nature. And a lot of it has an educational quality, but that's where I got the title of the program from. So now we're going to go through and look at some different habitats. That's how I'm organizing some of tonight's program with some case studies of work I've done that depict different habitat types. So where are we? We're on the coast. Let's start with that. And we're going to look at this coast-wide panel project that was funded through the New Carissa oil spill settlement. And this was 76 panels up and down the coast, many of which you probably have seen if you visited any state parks in the area.
Yeah.
So I feel like I was well qualified for this project, having done many seasons of field work with seabirds, mostly up in Alaska. So let's take a closer look at this project. As we started, you know, we toured the coast, and there were all sorts of different signs, and none of them matched. And as you see here, some are in disrepair. You see the rust, but a lot of them are just dated. And there's a more modern techniques that we use on this project to get our point across. So characteristics of this project were the illustrated backgrounds. Each panel had a you know, kind of a lighter background with bold shapes that would accommodate the text. We used a lot of profile cuts, which is the term for what you see here, where the panel actually has a custom shape cut into it to, you know, draw in people's interest. We put icons on each panel, which included what can you do, you know, to invite the viewer to action based on the theme of the particular panel. And they all have this blue wave across the bottom. So when you're out there seeing panels, look for these characteristics. There's a lot of them out there. This panel is very typical of that series. You see all the different elements, the illustration, illustrated background. There's a little ocean icon, we call it, in the bottom, and then the blue wave. So here we are up at Cape Mears. This is the panel that was kind of the orientation panel there. Yes, it does look like a lump of coal, but it's you know, it's dated in various ways. And so this is what the type of panel we came up with. You can, if you look really closely in that old spruce tree, you can see a marbled merlin. Okay, who sees it? Yeah, okay, has sharp eyes. So here we are again at Cape Mears, and This, so this is what I do first. I do a little sketch here. And submit this to the client. And after making some adjustments based on their comments, I do the painting. And you can see this was quite a large painting. It's like 7 feet long. I couldn't fit it on my desk. Can we turn these off?
Off?
Yeah, they're illuminating the screen too much.
Oh,
We have a request for a restart. Are we good with that? Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I think so. We just don't want to illuminate the screen too much. Okay, so there's the painting. It's a wraparound on the desk. So then there's the final piece there with all the text on and so forth. So throughout we tried to make big, bold paintings that will engage people. This is a kind of meet the stars of the Oregon coast here, and eventually that showed where all the wildlife refuges and seabird colonies are along the coast. So that's the final panel, and then here it is out in the wilderness of Harris Beach State Park. Further expanding on that idea of cutting these into shapes, we did quite a number of these that were actually the shape of intertidal creatures. So here's a hermit crab. The square is just where technically where the plate is going to attach to the back of the panel. The original drawing there. We've got a couple samples here. Here's a sculpin. I think it's quite effective and looks nice up there. This one worked out well. This is back when we had sunflower stars. Yeah, they are coming back. Okay, so a big part of this project was to keep people from climbing on the offshore rocks and islands. Okay, that was kind of the impetus that started the whole thing. So we have to do some depictions of disturbance. Here's my sketch that I originally have of a guy who's disturbing the MERS here. Okay, and having worked with MERS for many years, I'm quite familiar with their behavior. So they do this head bobbing thing first when they're disturbed. So that's what I was depicting here. I went ahead and submitted this, and they said, people think they're just looking at the guy. They don't know about the head bobbing. I'm like, but that's what they do. Yeah, people don't know that. So they said, we need more carnage, I said, okay, well, what about this? And they said, what do we got here? Look at this chick. Oh my God. In the mouth here. I know, I'm sorry, I said I wouldn't walk around, but it is irresistible here. Okay, so they said too much disturbance. Okay, I'll take it back a notch. I'm just trying to get it where you want it here. Okay, so we got some birds flying off the cliff. We got the gulls coming in to take the legs. We got the Unabomber climbing up on the side there. They said, yes, this is the correct amount of disturbance that we want to depict. So here we have it. There's the painting, the whole thing worked up in the end with the text on it. And then we planned on putting it at another site. And they say, hey, but we don't have any MERS here. Oh, no. Photoshop is a beautiful thing, people, I tell you. So here, I reused some of those elements. The guys still climbing here, okay? But this is actually, I think this one's at Seal Rock here locally. So I put in the appropriate birds and so forth. And that worked out. And then another one, they said, well, we don't have any oyster catcher. Well, that's no problem. I just got those on separate layers. I just took it right. There you go. So that turned out to be quite versatile at a number of sites to get our message across. And similarly, this is to prevent disturbance of harbor seals in this particular spot. Kayakers were an issue, but then at another spot, they said, well, we don't have any kayakers. Our real problem here is people with their cell phones trying to get close. So I said, okay, well, let's do that one too. So I said to my wife, Dawn, pretend like you're taking a picture of a harbor seal. So she went ahead and posed for that, and there she is. You see her? Okay, this next panel I wanted to show you is depicts the behavior, the mating behavior of Cassin's auklet. Now this happens at night and no one gets to see this. So I had to consult some scientific journals of some PhD who was able to study this from blind or something. So I got this out and read about it, studied it, and then came up with this sketch. And it shows a lot of those positions that they get in, and it's a communal activity of them interacting like this during the mating season. And then there's the painting, which I really do enjoy a couple aspects of this. Painting something that people don't get to see and showing animal behavior. Those are two really nice things to be able to include. And here are the auklets at play. Okay, so we're going very local here again. These panels are at Uquina Bay State Park right out here. If you go on this road right here and just drive, you'll hit these panels. Okay. Right down this road right here. So there's the sketches I submitted, and here I'm working on the paintings. And these are about the birds that are found here in the bay and how they interact with people and the fishing industry. So this is a nice one showing the behavior underwater and the herons spawning.
Who gets the original painting? Do the client gets them, or like the original paintings get them?
Everything's negotiable. This one's hanging in my wife's office. Let's just leave it at that. I see you eyeing it. Here we go. Right here. Down just down the road. So I think we can all
So he's not muted now. It must be your computer.
are you talking to me? Okay. We can all agree that this is not an attractive fact. I think, what's that? This is down at Sunset Bay State Park, but I'm glad you're an expert on restrooms.
Later in the month when we're doing our trail work down there.
So, thank you. Yes. So here's the sketch of what we wanted, and we're like, that's an ugly wall, bigger the better on this one, people. So this thing's like 9 feet long or something, but there's the initial sketch. They just wanted, you can see the difference. They just wanted the people larger, and this one's about tide pool etiquette. So it's all about how to explore the intertidal zone responsibly. So there's the painting, and that's got a lot on. Yeah, there we are sprucing up the wall of that bathroom. So to finish up our coastal section here, I wanted to touch on the digital illustrations I started to do at this time. So this is 2019. This is like the first one I ever did. It's like, well, if I did you can say there's a hybrid. It's a drawing, and then I scanned it and then added the color on the computer. It's like, woo, first time I ever did it. Now I do it all the time, as we'll get to later in the program. But it just gets you to a closer place. So now I'm presenting color illustrations to the client right off the bat. And this is actually the first time I did that. So there's the painting. And there's a nocturnal leeches storm petrel coming into the colony. And again, we're showing under the ground. But let's see, I think I got a little carried away with the number of storm petrels. So here's the painting, and then you can see in that one we have to delete a few petrels. Okay, like, come on, you got to leave some room for the text on here, Ron. So anyway, that's finishing up with that project. Now, part of this same funding was to add artwork to this visitor center. It's called the Oregon Welcome Center down just south of Coos Bay. This is called Chrissy Fields Visitor Center. So it's a wonderful building, but hey, I don't know. We got this big shelf up here. We just got some Christmas lights up there. We got to spruce this place up a little bit. Okay, get some local wildlife in there. It's kind of generic. So here's an example. Here's just a corner of that building. And we turn this into the kids' corner. So
Oh.
We got a big painting of the offshore rocks with all the seabirds, and it's engaging because we got all sorts of comments from the seabirds on there. Not to mention a cushy crab down there. I mean, very inviting. So we saw that shelf earlier with the Christmas lights on there. So the vision was to turn that into a seabird couple. Right? And so this is my original concept sketch. And you know, it would have been nice to do a mural back then. Didn't quite have the budget for that. The idea was to have it be 3D and the birds would come out on that shelf. So this was actually done with a different company. They asked me if I had ever done sculptures of birds. And I said, no, but I can. So I did end up doing these. I'll take you through that process a little bit. And this was very much a learning process for me, a process of invention. So here, this is the armature just made out of aluminum wire. And then the next step was to bulk it out with a bulking agent. In this case, it was aluminum foil. I just slapped the aluminum foil and it adds a lot of shape to the thing. And then on top of the aluminum foil, then you go with your tape. You can use paper tape on there. And then I used a layer of like a sculptural medium made out of spackle compound, Elmer's glue, and toilet paper. Liz, it's unused toilet paper.
Okay.
I saw you, I could tell what you were thinking. All right, but you can see that, so we're getting a little further along. This is the stage where I have the tape on and I'm starting to put that compound on the outside. But through doing that, you get a nice sculptural form here. There's another one. Now, you can see on this slide here, you can get very detailed with this. We're doing all the detail in the skin between the toes on this cormorant here. And then the gray material is where I needed it to be stronger. I use something called epoxy sculpt that gets rock hard. Okay, Liz knows what I'm talking about. So anyway, then you know, it's a little uneven with the different splotchy colors. So then I put a coating on each one of gesso and hung them out to dry. So, you know, my wife Dawn, she came home one day to a horrible sight, I must say. Oh my God. Oh, man. That's tough. I had some explaining to do. All right, so I had to also make rock, which turned out to be, actually, it's quite easy to make rock convincing. So we had an old doghouse in the backyard. I got out a chainsaw and cut that thing up and used those pieces of the doghouse to make these rocks. Now another thing, you know, we got a variety of shapes here. I added some additional materials. The doghouse is the most memorable aspect. But anyway, another thing I learned through this process is guano. It's very easy to make. It's easy to make convincing splatters of bird poop. It's not a problem. Anyone in the room could do. Anyway, so we got that on there and real pieces of grass and so forth to make it all look convincing. So here's the
dog.
We have a request for a new doghouse.
You cut out the old one.
The dog hadn't been with us for some years. You had to inject that sad element. Anyway, here are the finished sculptures. And we're showing, you know, a lot of behavior. So here are the Brandt's cormorants in full breeding plumage. If you're wondering what the plumes are on the cormorants, those are made from the quills of turkey feathers. So, yeah. These are some of their postures during the mating season as they're trying to attract the mate. And we included some Western gulls. Now, I get the occasional compliment, I'll say, but this is the greatest compliment I have ever received, shown here on the next slide. I was on the other side of the parking lot when I observed this. Here we have a western gull. There's a driver by who rubbernecked the scene and saw this western gull trying to mate with my sculptures. I had to fight that horny bird off. So here we are lifting these sculptures up onto that shelf. You can see that's the doghouse structure underneath. So here's the shelf. We're just going to flash back to doing it before and after. So there's the sculptures up there. I really enjoyed that. Oops. Okay, a couple children's books, also related to coastal themes. Little seal and little fox, just a few illustrations from there. And again, my typical, something you've already observed quite a bit. I'm showing the nesting underneath the rocks in the crevices, cavities, and rubble. So just looking at the process a little bit here, here's an initial sketch of an idea. I got a big beach master chasing a young male, and then just on the same illustration, you see I just did a little box up in the corner. Oh, maybe I'll just show that aspect of the scene, just zoom in on it and have it be a little more intense. I ended up really not wanting to do that either. I wanted the action coming at the viewer. So that's what I have. Same concept here. Now we just got it coming into your face a little bit more. Notice on these illustrations, it's always important to put a line straight through the middle, because that's where the gutter of the book is going to go. So they all have to have a soft spot in the middle. So I just draw a line right through there. See, add it on there too. So here's the process of the illustration. I got it on the watercolor paper here. And just starting to, I got pencil drawing, and then I refine it as an ink line. And I'm looking at photographs during this process. I got to find shots I've taken with the mouth open, study the inside of the mouth of that big adult male seal. And then I use a wet on wet technique. Now I'm using acrylic paint here, but it's a watercolor technique. Many of you are probably familiar with the wet on wet with watercolor, but you could do it with acrylic too. And that's my general technique. So you can see the paper's wet and shiny. At this stage, you're very loose. You're just slapping the stuff on there. The wilder, the better. You're getting all these, got the blue in the mouth. Is the seal's mouth blue? No, but you just throw that color on there. Some of that's going to show through later. So people see it at this stage sometimes and say, that looks terrible, Ron. It's okay. Don't worry about it. We're going to get there. So here's the finished illustration. You got the soft spot going down the middle, and then the big burst is where the text is going to go. Okay. And you still see a little bit of that blue. And the different colors woven into that's called avoiding the local color. Okay, and that's always good to do, is try to avoid being strictly local with your color. You can throw anything in there, but the prominent colors are still show through. This is a large mural I did for the hospital, even before it was the color hospital. So this was in the ICU, and the intention was to give patients there something to walk to as a goal during their recovery. And so I wanted to do something that was soothing. So I wanted to do these soaring pelicans, seemed very inspirational, but I also wanted to give a lot for the person to study after they made the effort of walking over to this. So we're going to see the painting develop here. So this is on 4 full-size plywood sheets. That's the early stages of the painting. I think that looks like my garage there. And here you can see the process with a finished panel, and then just blocking in the initial undercoat. So working on this thing, I had to get into some unusual positions. I know we're talking about the artwork here, but what's really going on is my contribution to fashion in this show. I mean, look at that combination of the plaid with the Hawaiian shirt. That's much. But forget the artwork, I'm telling you. Okay, so here again, this shows the process. We have some of the panels just blocked in, and others with the detailed artwork, and there's the final piece. And they did move it to the new hospital. Another thing I want to touch on here is that I'd like to do murals myself, but even better is to get child labor. I've done a number of mural projects with kids, and let me tell you, it's delightful because they can get away with all sorts of stuff that I wouldn't even think of. I mean, people would be looking at me funny if I did a rainbow on a seal's belly. Okay, but it's terrific, and the kids just have a natural instinct for doing this wild stuff. But look at that wonderful octopus being painted there. So this is up in Alaska. I worked with a group of Aleut kids up there to create this mural. And this is depicting the island life with the halibut fishery being big up there. They have the Russian Orthodox Church on there, a lot of the local wildlife. So this one and then the next one, that was done in successive years. On both of them, they insisted on having the science people on it. So that would be Fish and Wildlife Service personnel that went to study seabirds out there. So you can see there's the science people up there. And then again, in the next year's mural, we had that. So this is the next one we did. And this is showing you can see in the center here the connection of the tribe to the wildlife of the area. Okay, this is a project I did for NOAA, depicting protecting the threatened and endangered species that they're charged with protecting. And this is done with a technique called sgraffito done on pottery. I teamed up with a local potter to do these. And then there's a bunch of these still in the Hatfield Marine Science Center Visitor Center, and they sent the other ones off to the NOAA office in Washington. So I love doing collaborations. I didn't want to, necessarily do all the work, so I just did the surface decoration of these. Marbled murrelet. There's the bearded seal with some nice curl on the whiskers, I must. And there's the display over at Hatfield. Okay. I know what you're all thinking. Ron, that's enough with the coastal, okay? We want to see some watershed stuff here. Right? Come on. So we got a section here for you. This painting I did for the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs for river restoration they did on the middle fork of the John Day River. Okay, and that's depicting the wildlife present after the restoration project. But we did a whole series. I worked with a couple other writer and a designer on this, showing the various aspects of the restoration. So that's we had the restored stream, and then talking about the salmon recovery and showing the changes to the channel, which is that's the type of work that this group does, obviously. And then going into the process of the restoration here on that panel. There's just a closer look at that restored stream panel and talking about some of the benefits of the restoration. Similarly, this is on Tinker Creek in Wyoming, I believe. And this is showing different seasons of the floodplain here. And how the restoration restored a lot of life to the area. Similar underwater scene here, showing some of the wildlife benefiting from that restoration. Here again in this is for a wildlife refuge in Montana, which describes the planting of native trees and shrubs that benefited the restoration project. I do love doing these underwater scenes with fish. And the other day, my wife said to me, "You should do more fish. You're really good at fish, Mom." And I said, "I do fish all the time. What are you talking about? Come on. How many fish you want me to do?" I know that this group, most of you are Beavers fans. So This is for a restoration project in Utah, I believe. But just describing the benefits of beaver. It looks like we have a beaver dam equivalent photo up there. So, yeah, okay, Watershed Council, a lot of people are getting in on this river restoration act, okay? You're not so special. Here we got a group of mountain bikers that collaborated, I think it was with the Forest Service, to do stream restoration and rebuild their mountain biking trails in a way that would be more compatible with the habitat use of the stream. So you can see this also depicts the beaver dam equivalents here. Salmon life cycle illustration. A lot of times you just see it in a circle. I get the figure 8 going here, showing a little bit more of the complexity of that cycle. But why limit yourself to fish? Here's the American eel life cycle depicted on this one. So this next slide we have, this is a depiction of the Coos watershed. So they have this for an interactive display that they bring to events and so forth. This is an early version of the design where we're showing different, so basically people could then come and add the labels to this and have it be interactive with visitors to their booth. So that's an early version. We got rid of a lot of it, and this is what we end up with in the end here. So, the map is quite detailed. It's got all that shading on it. It's called hill shade, and I think you can do this on the computer, but I couldn't figure that out, so I just threw it all free. Okay, here's the Coos watershed again. We got this is for a permeable parking area that they created, and this is just showing visitors the benefits of that style and how that parking lot works to let the water go back through and filter out the contaminants from the parking lot and so forth. You can see I used some elements of that earlier illustration. They also had me do a whole bunch of small panels at Millicoma Marsh. We'll take a look at those here. This is showing how you all know about the beaver deceiver in this group, probably. I know the Watershed Council uses those a lot for their restoration, so how to baffle a beaver. So the Coos watershed hires me a lot. So what are you guys up to here? I'm standing right here. I mean, you got my number. That's okay. This is part of the series of small panels, and this is drawn entirely on the computer. It's a digital illustration. I'm going to take you through that process, but I also do the writing on about half of these panels. And you'll notice I'm from the Oregon Coast Today School of Headline Writing. You got to get a good pun in there, I feel. So on the computer, I use a stroke and fill technique is what I call it. So there's a black line drawing, and then under that is a layer of color. Okay. So so you got a little color on there. That's just because I screwed up. Okay. That's all that is. It's not supposed to be there. And you can see I did the same thing on the next one. Oh, that's supposed to be the color. I got some black on that one, but it all works out in the end. Here's the illustration. Okay. Here again, with puns, I mean, I've gone on like led bird walks around here with it, and they look at people like this. Okay, trust me. So this is for South Slough Estuarine Reserve, also on the South Coast here. This is a depiction. I did a bunch of panels for a trail going from the visitor center down into the estuary. So, okay, so I went and started doing these digital illustrations because I thought it would save me time. Okay, I'm not so sure. What, is that a hand up back there? No, okay. But the reality is I can zoom way in on these things. So then I've just ended up doing more detail. So I just make it way, way bigger. Like, wow, you can do so much detail. So I'm not sure I saved any time. But we're not going back to this, people. Okay, so I try to do like half paintings, half digital illustrations. But now for this initial stage, I'm not doing the photocopy and cellophane tape. I always do the original concept illustration by drawing directly on the screen. Okay, so we'll look at that. And this is a rough draft here. And I can do these elements separately and move them around. And I can just type in to zoom, make things larger, bigger, no photocopies. There's the final painting. This was for actually like an elementary school mural. So all the kids could come and check out all the wildlife. This is in Vermont, I believe. And here again, this is you can get looking pretty good on these concept illustrations, drawing them on the computer. Then there's the painting. And the problem is sometimes I submit the rough draft and the client thinks it's the final. I'm like, what? No, I haven't even done the illustration yet. That's just to show you where things go. So now I have to send them something like this. So I'm saying, okay, this is the rough draft. So this shows the rough draft and the final, so you know what we're dealing with here. Okay. All right. So we covered watersheds. We'll move on to prairies. I've done a lot of work with prairies recently. We'll start with some coastal prairies here. This is at Nestucca Bay National Wildlife Refuge. And this is a digital illustration here as well with one of those profile cuts. But if you're thinking, well, that looks kind of messy up there. What are you doing up on the top there? It looks kind of messy. Well, the white line is the cut line. And then I just know from doing these that you just got to like throw a bunch of color up there in black. So that basically what I'm doing is I'm making it so if the fabricator cuts it wrong, it'll still look good, if that makes sense. Yeah. So here's that panel out on the print. And you can see that the profile cut on there is nice. It adds a lot of interest. Well, so here we have, here again, that looks kind of messy, but it all works out. So you can see these are quite complex, showing the different pollinators up there, the wildlife refuge. Okay, so I've also done a bunch of work for prairies and in the Great Plains region. This thing is 50 feet long. So the challenge with this is I could have done it as a painting, kind of like that hospital painting that I showed you earlier. But they wanted this for mobile display to do at, conference or what are they called? Expositions, conventions. That's the word I'm looking for. Like Pheasant Fest and CavalCon and things like this. So, no, I'm serious about that. Anyway, so it was like, how can I paint this and then scan it? I just have a small flatbed scanner. It would take like a week to scan these things. So this is entirely a digital illustration. Now, something I actually should have touched on more throughout this is the benefit of this artwork for conservation. This is a very direct example of that. And what I'm doing here, this is for working lands for wildlife. And this, they go to these conventions to engage landowners to convince them to manage their cattle operations for wildlife. And that's what so this panel here depicts, obviously there's a lot of livestock in the background, but showing the compatibility of livestock with the local wildlife and how the landowners and ranchers can team up with this organization to manage for the benefit of both. So this is different from the last one. It's showing a more upland sage habitat, as is this one. Remember earlier when I said, well, I just zoom in and then I can do even more detail than before. So look at this. I mean, I don't know how I decided to do a 50-foot drawing and draw every blade of grass. It was a bad idea. So anyway, we're depicting another, wonderfully intact ecosystem here. And then this next panel shows the incursion zone. A big problem on the Great Plains is red cedar getting into the plains habitat, and then that destroys it for a lot of those prairie obligate species that will no longer occur if there are even just a few of these trees in the vicinity. So this is the transition panel, and then this is fully encroached. Having those wood cedars also leads to a lot of fires and so forth. So anyway, I love working on this. It's very directly aiding conservation. It's really propaganda, if you want me to be honest. But it's good propaganda, so I approve. Here's the completed panel. They're illuminated from behind. They're pretty fun. Yeah, 8x8. So I also did, well, this is the first one I did. It was for South Dakota, and they want their particular state depicted. Okay, so you got to have the state flower. You have Sioux Falls, South Dakota in the background, and all the South Dakota wildlife. Here you go. So that's that panel. But here's the thing: other states got wind of this. All right, so you can see this says Dakota grasslands where good things grow. So then Texas comes along. Texas grasslands where great things grow. That is so Texas. Yeah. You can see it's quite different, but it kind of follows the same formula because they want Dallas in the background rather than Sioux Falls. They got to have their flag there and the Texas blue bonnet flowers and all that. So it's really, in the end, it's quite different. Let's go back. You see, there's that, and then the Texas. And I just finished this one up here a couple weeks ago. This is for Oklahoma. I'm not even going to tell you what their slogan is. Okay, so one thing I hope has come across in this presentation is that for me, it's very important to have the can-do attitude. And we're going to have some more examples of this here, but whatever the challenge is, my answer, even if I haven't done it before, is yes, I can. And then I got to figure out. Actually, YouTube's really helpful. So the Hatfield Marine Science Center here approached me and said, "Hey, Ron, we got someone donated all these walrus tusks. Can you come up with a way of displaying these?" So I said, "Well, okay." And so this was the original sketch here. We have a glass case with all their ivory. You see that all the tusks along the bottom there, and that this was going to be a 3D sculpture of the walrus. So they kind of like that concept, but they said, "Well, you know, Rob, we got other marine mammals here." So I said, "Okay, well, yeah, I can incorporate those, but I'm going to need a bigger wall." So I don't know if anyone's seen this mural down at Hatfield, but this was the next stage of the design. So it shows the walrus, but also the other local pinnipeds. But then we got, and you'll see. I'm not going to say any more right now, but here we're starting the mural. I'm just blocking it in here. You can see the different aspects of it. I got the stellar sea lion up in the top, and there I'm blocking it in. There's a painting of a walrus, just blocking it in, then adding the detail. But then, you know, that was going to be a 3D walrus. I needed to incorporate the tusks. So I said, well, I'd still like to do the 3D element. I said, I think that the walrus should be popping out of the wall. And they said, okay, we can do that, but you're going to have to make the walrus way up high so the teenage boys can't jump up and grab the tusks. So if you ever go out and see that, I had to make the walrus like 12 feet off the ground. So no tusk grabbing. So there's the painting, but where's the 3D part? Well, I'm working. Here's back in my garage. And I'm building this metal and wood structure here. And I had to make real sure that those tusks didn't come out of that thing. So I drilled right through them and put metal through them, patched them real well. You know, you can make anything out of duct tape. So that was bulked out with the aluminum again, and then on what's called hardware cloth. The eye of that walrus is just like a discarded bird toy. that was around the house, quite effective. You can see some paper mache on that hardware cloth. So I started it at home, here you go, and then I actually mounted it and I got to integrate it with that painting. So here, adding that sculptural compound on, you can see some nice detail in the sculptural aspect of it. And in the end, the goal, which I hope I achieve, is to make it so you can't really tell where the painting ends and the sculpture begins. So I think it achieves that fairly well. Here I am hugging the 3D part of the walls. Okay, so those whiskers on that are also turkey feathers that I made those whiskers out of. I have a friend who's a turkey hunter, so I have a source. So a client that approached me, and obviously marine debris is a big issue. They wanted a sculpture made out of marine debris. And I actually had done this a few times, so I agreed to do it. This is for someplace in Albany, New York, of places. But so I got to work on it, but the beaches here are too clean. I couldn't find enough marine debris. So I teamed up with, this is Elizabeth Roberts. Some of you may know her. She has a studio on the South Coast. And I said, and I know I visited her place before. She's got a whole barn full of marine debris, well organized. I'm like, Elizabeth, we got to team up on this. I don't got the debris for this. So this is a striped bass we're working on here. Nice detail. She does work for Wash to Shore, organization many of you I'm sure have heard of. So here we're bulking it out and we're getting those pieces of plastic and just cutting them to look like scales. And there's the final product. Yeah, well, that worked out really well. It's well, here's to scale. So on these marine debris sculptures, what you want is for the whole thing to work together to make one sculpture like this that's just viewed as that object. But then when you walk up close to it, you want to see the individual recognizable pieces of debris. So you want to walk up and say, hey, that's a bottle cap, that's a lighter, that's a kid's toy boat or whatever. So that's the balance you're trying to strike, is between the whole and the individual aspects. Here again, you see all those little toy wheels and stuff on there. So have you seen a lot of pictures and paintings of people in this slideshow? So in the past, I've tried to avoid that. I enjoy wildlife. That's mostly what I want to pick. But, that's starting to change here. So a client approached me with this project. It's to depict the Underground Railroad. This is the Park Service, is the client. And they said, well, we're doing this series about the Underground Railroad and enslaved people escaping. And the client is very unhappy with the illustrations. They say this is a sensitive subject matter and it's just not working out. So I talked to my wife, Dawn, about it. She says, the client is already angry and upset. You want to take that on? You don't even do people. Okay. Run the other way. But I said, no, I shouldn't not do things because it's difficult or scary. So I decided to take this on. I'm going to show you some of the work and take you through the process here. So this is an enslaved person attempting to escape, a couple of abolitionists saving the person. So this is the lower portion of this illustration is kind of the best place I could get to just in my own mind, conceptualizing it. And then I need to make it more specific and realistic. So that's when I start posing. So I got my puffy shirt on and I'm like, okay, I'll be one of these abolitionists. You recognize this pose from that sketch? So I'm getting in that pose. I'm getting in the other pose too. Okay, so then here I am in the illustration. And I do this a lot. This is what I've started to do. This is just, I did these illustrations a year ago and I've done quite a few since then, actually, for various clients. And so there I am in the boat. It took off a few pounds, all right? If you really want me to be honest, I added some hair, took off a few pounds. Okay, so here's some more of the illustrations for that project. They were done in sepia tones. And they had to be, they had to be sensitive and show the courage and independence of the individuals who were escaping. So more recently, I've done this is on the National Historic Trails, another project for the Park Service, depicting, this is I believe, the California Historic Trail. And I'm working on these. They're proving quite difficult. Here's some of the detail on that. You can see all these wagon trains back there, but each needs to be depicted with quite a bit of detail. And they have a whole team of historians that look these over and, basically pick them apart to make sure. When you're drawing something, you really got to know a lot about it. Like you got to know all aspects of the construction of the cart and how the harnesses are hooked up to so anyway. Here's another from that series, and yes, here I am again. Come on, check out this mountain, people. All right, what's next? So just to finish up here, I haven't done any skull and snake drawings for a long time, so I'm thinking of going now, actually, what I'm working on right now is this mural down at the Visual Arts Center. I just sketched this out a couple days ago, and I'll be painting this next week. There's the design. So what you've seen in the show, I've done a lot of realistic illustrations. They said I could do anything I want. I'm like, I'm going whimsical, people. This is going to be cartoon style. So that's what we got here. So this is what it looks like right now. And you can check it out and then see what it looks like when it's done. That's the plan. Hopefully it looks something like that. Thank you very much. We'll do a few questions then. All right, I'll open it up to any questions you might. Cheryl?
Someone, an organization, wanted to work with you, how might they do that?
Don't forget to repeat questions so the people.
All right, she asked very nicely for my number. So Cheryl works with the Watershed Council and is inquiring about working with me in the future. I think you know where to find. I'd love to. 541. Yeah, no, I know it's an important aspect of the Watershed Council is to communicate the work they're doing. So we could do some panels for that. Yeah.
So the longevity of some of these pieces, like the UV interference, how do you work with?
The question is about the longevity of the panels specifically and how they deal with UV radiation and so forth. So, yeah, there is a lot of weather around here. So they're guaranteed for 10 years. It's called high pressure laminate is the term used for these. Yeah, they're guaranteed for 10 years. So if they don't last for 10 years, you can get new ones from the fabricator. And there is an issue the biggest issue is light hitting them. So if they're north facing, they last for a very long time, well over 10 years. If they're south facing and the sun's always hitting them, they do fade, especially certain colors. So there is a certain lifespan on the pans. In back?
Yeah, you were saying that really the 50-foot long mural that you couldn't scan it. I was wondering technically how you kind of.
Okay, so she's asking about the 50-foot long mural and how that was done basically since I didn't paint it and scan it. I drew the whole thing on my screen. Okay, and this is it's wonderful to be able to draw directly on the screen with the modern equipment that's available. And to be able to zoom in on it. You know, as I get older, I'm gonna be able to extend my career this way. As my eyesight goes, I'm thinking ahead. I'm never gonna retire. But I can just zoom in on this stuff and do it large. So, now I showed you those different state murals. And I do everything in layers because it's just the way to go these days, because the client always wants changes. So I draw everything separately. And let me just tell you, that last one for Oklahoma, I just worked off of the earlier state panels. It has 400 layers. It has over 400 layers. So these are very complex illustrations. Did that answer your question? Yeah, it's just drawn right on the screen.
Yeah, and then you just,
And then I just send it to the fabricator. And they make that final glowing screen thing that we saw.
Yeah, which states have you done? Names that, I mean.
States?
How many states have you done?
You mean that like the prairie ones where it's for a specific state? Just those three that I showed. Yeah, I am hoping more join the club, but there's only so many with those big prairies here. So, I don't know. I'll probably run out eventually, but they are fun to do. Yeah.
So with, you said you did the wordage and on some of those interpretive panels.
Mhm.
What is your thought process with that? How do you get your tagline? How do you get the, the client obviously is guiding you in a certain direction, but interpretive panels are hard to grab people's attention, but yours do. So what's your thought process behind that?
So the question was about how to write the text for interpretive panel to grab people's attention and hold it. So basically it varies quite a bit from between projects. A lot of times you get a client who wants to supply the text and not pay you to write it, I might add. But in those situations, I just do what's called punching it up. So I just get it and try to improve it and make it more engaging and lively. And you don't think I'm engaging and lively? No. So that's just, basically you just have to think about how to do that. And the reality is, a lot of times I'll write something, whether the client's supplied an initial draft or not, and I come up with something that I think is funny and engaging and so forth. And a lot of times they hate it, and they just want it to be really dry and straightforward. So it is a real challenge to know what approach to take. And you get a sense for the particular client and then see what they're going for. And I can try to steer them in a certain direction. But usually they just want it done the way they want it. So, I try to tell them like, well, you can't have, like you want to shoot for 250 words on it or so. And sometimes they want a textbook on a stick that is like 1,000 words. And I'm just trying to convince them, no one's going to read that, or the number of people is going to plummet precipitously any amount you go over 250 words. So, did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. In back?
You mentioned your cater, have you worked with like the same one over the years, and where are they at?
There's a couple different good ones. I work with Fossil Industries in New Jersey, but there's Ozone is equally good. They're based out of Arizona.
Yeah, from all the thousands of pictures you painted and drawn, where you must have a personal favorite.
The question was, out of all the things I've illustrated, if I have a personal favorite. Boy, that's a tough one.
Chicken.
You're paying.
We're getting a variety of, for those online, we're getting a variety of suggestions from the audience, including my pants. Which I don't know if we got that on camera. You'll just have to trust me on that. That is really a hard question.
Chicken daddy.
That's a photograph.
You-
Oh, yeah. You can bring that up. I think that maybe that, I don't know what my favorite, but this one might be one of my favorite right here. Because it was very difficult. And it felt like a triumph to do it, because I didn't know if I could do these. And that seems like a strange thing to say because I've done a lot of illustrations, but you know, actively avoiding doing people and so forth, and then taking this on. When you try something that it's more difficult, you don't know what you can, if you can do it, it's more of a triumph. And it feels better when you're actually able to do it. So I'll nominate that. Linda?
Going back to favorites, Ron, what is your, throughout your career, and then what is your favorite kind of a project been that?
Honestly, ones that have it, I would say generally speaking, ones that have an impact on conservation. There've been a lot of fun things like some of that sculptural aspect because it is so different. You know, I don't do it very often. I'm like, this is great. I'm slapping around you know, glue and toilet paper here. What could be better? But also, you know, I do want to say that you know, we have different ideas of what makes America great. And to me, what makes America great is our public lands. And so when I have an opportunity to add something to our public lands, this is really important. That will make people cherish them and appreciate them more, then that's very rewarding.
Going on to what makes America great is artists like you and your impact on children. It really grabs me emotionally. It's the vivid colors that pop. It's the texture. It's the way children run up to those panels, touch them. Of course, we love that. So bravo for being a great educator for the youth, because that's who really I see the impact. I know you are retired educator too, but I truly appreciate that about whatever you're doing. And that's what I get first is how children respond.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. I think they'll like this one here. Yeah. And I anticipate some Instagram photos with the kids visiting the beach. That's the idea.
Great.
Another question over here.
So, greenwashing and what projects would you take on? Would you do a project with Chevron to make it like they're doing great conservation efforts? Do you have those kind of issues philosophically, you know, like do a Roundup ready illustration? Not money, you know? So there's a lot of, you listen to your work and everything is sort of press. And you and I, we've been in lots of wildlife situations. You just don't see all of these species congregated together. Sometimes it takes 1,000 minutes to get cheetahs doing what they do on National Geographic film. So you feel, so there's that. Other projects you wouldn't do because it's greenwashing, or it's you know, conservation. One man's cattle is another man's bulldog. Poop sheep.
So the question was about, are there types of projects I wouldn't take on? Basically what the question is getting at is if there, it's for a client whose goals or activities I disagree with. So I haven't really run into that problem too much to the extent that it's bothered me. I am thinking ahead that I'm doing an art camp with kids up on St. Lawrence Island this summer, and that's paid for by Royal Caribbean Cruise. I don't have any problem with it. No. So, that would be an example of what you're talking about. But, well, maybe I haven't thought about it deeply enough, but I'm looking forward to working with the kids up there. And that's the extent of it.
You mentioned the previous panels are older, interpretive science dated. What makes them dated?
So, the question was about what makes panels dated, and basically to explain that term dated. So it's two different things. One is the materials that were used. So, in the past, there weren't these fiberglass laminate panels available that have the vivid colors and the ability to cut them into shapes. A lot of the older panels are made on metal and have rusting issues or aren't in full color. And don't actually even, and another aspect is they don't have the nice thickness to them that makes them feel substantial. So that's kind of the modern look, is to have a nice thicker panel that is in full color with vibrant colors on it. And then the other is just a stylistic difference. In the past, that for some reason, just the style was designers would just make the text like small and black. And then the illustrations would also be small. So you'd have a number of little small illustrations on the panel. And you can see this, I see it all the time. And it's like, why they're wasting so much space on there. And it's just not engaging. The text isn't engaging, the illustrations aren't engaging, and a lot of times the photographs aren't either. And part of that is the materials, the style, but also just the ability to do things much more easily on the computer. Because even if you're just taking photographs and fading them and doing work, great things on Photoshop to increase the vividness and interest. So it's a combination of those different factors that I just kind of outlined there.
A great example of that is we've been gone for a few months. We just came back, I took a walk on the bay. The new types of fishing interpretive signs down there, you've seen them on the bayfront.
I believe I have.
They have more realism in them than yours do, because they're showing fishing and techniques and lines, boats and all this, but they communicate so much better. They have the same general types of engagement. They use colors and textures and movement and things like that, that they just draw you right in. And I think they communicate and educate so much better than those old ones that you just kind of look at, you just kind of glaze over.
Yeah, as a community of people who do interpretive panels of different companies, we're all learning from each other and figuring out the best way to do it. So, and it's those things you're describing, and the goal is always to get people to look at it and then to take something away from it that is educational or connects them to the space that they're in.